G'day guys, welcome back to True Eagle. Let's talk about this Brisbane game. Now, first of all, apologies, it was a little bit later than usual. I knew to some extent it was going to be a little bit late this week, had a little bit on this weekend, and England was in the Euros final last night, so I had to, get around that a little bit. Unfortunately, football wasn't coming home, but regardless, let's talk about this Brisbane game. I've done a little bit of an extra review on it this morning just to discuss some talking points. It doesn't have to be a massively long one. To sum it up very briefly, I suppose in isolation, you would have to give us credit for a pretty good performance. I think it was one of those games where, had we were playing most other teams in the comp, we might have actually snatched the win. Brisbane are a very good side. And pleasingly as well, I think there were times where it threatened to get away from us and we were able to come back. But equally, every time that we had a response, Brisbane had one, and it was just a better and slightly more mature, I'm not sure about age demographic, but mentally mature team in Brisbane that was able to stave us off. And I think they'd probably look back on that and be thankful that they didn't let that slip, because we did really challenge them. And it was probably just a bad week to play West Coast with. Obviously, the emotion of the week that was. It was a big week. It was quite interesting to see Simo standing there. I love the fact that he's wearing the navy tracksuit. It was very humanizing, I thought. Like I said, we played well. It's actually, one of two valiant efforts we've had in losses over the last 2 months, and then 5 or 6 horrendous games around that. And interestingly, in both of those games, we've scored 92 or 93 points in losing efforts, which I don't know when the last time we've done that is. Like prior to 2024, like most of our losing scores, sometimes they're in the 30s, but generally they're not as high as 92. So, throughout this game, it was clearance where we were starting to get bushy, particularly out of the centre. But if you looked on it at the end of the game, a lot of the key stats when you consider inside 50s, clearances, contested ball, and uncontested ball, we really caught back up in a lot of respects. So we lost the inside 50s 46 to 56. We still got the ball inside 50 46 times, and that's, again, it's relatively good for us. We only lost the clearances by 9. They are a very good midfield, in particular with Lachie Neale doing his thing. We lost the contested ball by 13. We kind of saw that coming a little bit, but pleasingly, we won uncontested ball by 3, which I don't know if we've done at all this year. And we'll talk about some of the positional things that happened in this game, because it was nice to see some magnets moved around and players given opportunities in different roles. So for all this talk about, us making a few changes and seeing different aspects of the list and players in different roles, that definitely has been occurring, not just this week, but in particular this week. So we saw Ruben Jimmy play exclusively at halfback, I think, or at least he didn't attend a single centre bounce, which is the first time that's happened since he was drafted by the Eagles. So he's playing a little bit more of a halfback role, and that sort of freed up Zane True to get 45% centre bounce attendances, which is by far more than he's ever had. So we saw Jinby at halfback. We saw Zane True actually played as a midfielder and played pretty well, I thought. He had 21 possessions, 5 clearances and 8 tackles. I think, what more could you really ask for a guy? That was basically his first real crack at AFL level. I know he's played like 7 or 8 games. There's been a few sub games. He's attended a few centre bounces. That was the first time we saw him actually play as a midfielder. I think he's definitely earned a spot for next week. We saw Ryan Marrick play on a wing to good effect. So he had 15 possessions, 6 score involvements, and used the ball at 93% disposal efficiency, and there was a goal assist in there as well to Luke Edwards, I think it was, the handball. We also see Liam Ryan, who has previously, been thrown around the ground a little bit this year. He's played a little bit of halfback. I think that was in the waffle. Then forward midfielder, and in this game we saw him a little bit more out of the goal square, which was an interesting move. So we are mixing it up a little bit. We saw Jermaine Jones play a little bit more forward. I think I read somewhere that he's been pretty evenly split between forward and back this year, which I didn't even notice. So we're throwing a few different magnets around, which is interesting to see. And I think Hutchinson also spent a little bit of time on the wing, if I'm not mistaken. So on top of that, we had Jaden Hunt, instead of play, predominantly wing like he has been. He was pushed onto a halfback flank and got a lot more of the footy. So for whatever reason, we've mixed around our mids, and Jinby and Hunt, who have been previously wingmen, were pushed back, and then we had Marrick and Luke Edwards back into the side playing on the wing with a little bit of Hutchinson, I believe. Either way, I think generally that worked to a pretty good effect. I think Luke Edwards was another player who probably had his best game for the club in some time, and Jaden Hunt, I think, has been kind of out of form since the early part of the season. He had 20 possessions. So there's a lot to like about that, and at the end of the day, we were just beaten by a better side. I don't want to get too excited about it, because I think everyone was expecting us to have a much better response this week, and to be honest, we've just come off a couple of months of just being really disappointing, and it went from things looking good after the Melbourne game to us eventually losing our coach. So I'm going to be pleased about this in isolation, but really hope this is the start of things to come and not just a flash in the pan that we were able to elevate for an emotional game. And this could present a little bit of opportunity for us as well, just to put my optimist hat back on. end of the year where we're trying to give players different opportunities, a hand has been forced. It's going to make us a little bit less conservative. So things like selection, we've become less conservative. We dropped Jack Darling. That's one classic example there. Dom Sheed was also left in the waffle, which is not quite the same as being dropped, but it was interesting that he didn't get forced back into the side. And that kind of just speaks to this better integrity we've had around selection this year, but it's also flowing onto the field in games, players playing in different roles. That's a really cool aspect to this last part of the season that hopefully brings us some growth, and hopefully we unearth someone we didn't expect. Maybe Zane True, this is the start of things to come. Who knows? I'm not sure. But to give some other players credit for really good games, Brady Hough, I think everyone noticed how good he was. He kept Cameron to 4 touches. I think Cameron's 2 goals, like one was when Hough was on the bench and the other one was a 50-metre penalty. But Brady Hough has kind of made him his bunny a little bit. So he had 18 touches himself, and that's really fantastic. And not a surprise, but credit where it's due. He's one of our best players. Also, our on-ballers in Yo and Kelly were better, and that kind of does speak to this idea that maybe they just weren't quite ready, / maybe Yo's head wasn't in the game. But, I think Kelly had a goal, 29 possessions, and covered more than 14 kilometres in this game. So did Harley Reid. He covered more than 14 kilometres. He had 7 clearances as well, 20 disposals. And Yo had 6 clearances, 24 possessions, and a long-range goal as well. So these are all little pleasing things. Again, it only really means anything to me if we continue this form. Not to be a negative Nancy, but credit where it's due for what we've seen. But I really hope we carry this form into next week, because I do think, in theory, this game against St Kilda, which we will cover in a completely different video, but I do think it's winnable, and we don't have too many winnable on-paper games left this year. So it's a big opportunity this week, and then, there's a Western Derby right after that. In the waffle, we also had a good win, which was nice to see. We saw Sheed and Darling go back to the waffle. Sheed had 31 disposals, 10 marks. Darling had 2 goals and 17 possessions. It's not really even just focusing on individuals in that game. I think if you look across a lot of the stats, there seem to be so many even contributions across the field. And we saw Bergiel kick 2 goals and have 14 touches, and I think he's playing a little bit more wing and half forward from what I can gather. Cully was one of their best players again, 2 goals, 21 possessions. Dewar, 2 goals. Jordan Baker kicked his first goal that I can ever remember Jordan Baker kicking in a game. Johnston kicked a goal. Archie Reid kicked 3 goals for. That was nice to see. And that seemed to be a really good game in the waffle where we actually had a win, and that's really pleasing. And it's like the first opportunity Archie Reid gets in a team that isn't getting spanked. He has 7 shots at goal. I think Matthew Knights even suggested he's probably not that far off being deserving of an AFL debut. I don't know how we're going to do that if we've got Alan Waterman and Williams, so I'm happy to let him play in the waffle a little bit longer. But that is the pleasing aspect of this, and hopefully we see a few more players rewarded before the end of the year. I think we all kind of want to see a little bit more of Jai Cully given the same opportunity in the AFL midfield as Zane Drew. I think that would be interesting to see. I want to see Johnston again. I want to see Dewar again. Maybe with Liam Duggan's unfortunate concussion, does Jordan Baker get a debut? I'm not sure if Bergiel's move to half forward works against him coming in for someone like a Liam Duggan. I'm not too sure. We'll talk a little bit more about selection in the proper St Kilda preview that I'll do. But those are just my thoughts on the game that was. It was a good performance. Like I said, I'm just kind of hoping this form is here to stay and it's not a flash in the pan, which is a little bit of my concern, but I actually think we're a real good chance next week. Saints fans are going to hate me saying that, and the last time I said that we're a real good chance to win, we got absolutely annihilated. But overall, it was an effort that we could be relatively proud of. They tried really hard, and Brisbane may be the best, or at least the form side of the comp right now, depending on your opinion. But if they're not number 1, they're right up there with Sydney and Carlton at the moment, and we really made them work for it, which is realistically all we could have really hoped for. Anyway, guys, that was just my short and snappy review of the Brisbane Lion game. I will do a St Kilda video this time tomorrow. You should have it up. So for now, let me know in the comments what you thought of this game. Bit of a confession as well. I think I've got a strained eyeball. I can barely see out of my right eye. So there is a good chance there were things that happened in this game that I did not see. I can barely see the notes on my screen right now. But look forward to your comments. Let me know what you thought of this game, and up the Eagles. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.